Nigeria is at the verge of making another major decision in its democratic journey as a nation. So there has been a torrent of political developments here, and this will define the moment. Here are our thoughts this weekend on some of the broad issues that will determine the outcome of the polls. So Sheita, the way I see it, there are a few things that are sort of going to broadly determine how these elections go. I think the first one is essentially voter turnout, because this is an election in which we've seen a very high number of people go out to register to vote. Mm-hmm. Now, in the past, that hasn't necessarily translated into people coming out to vote. I think these elections might be slightly different.
I definitely agree with you, and I mean there are lots of things that have pushed this huge voter turnout that we're seeing, and I believe that one big part of that was the EndSARS movement that happened towards the end of 2020. For the first time, a lot of Nigerians were able to see, a lot of young Nigerians, because that was where we were even seeing a deficiency of the voter turnout. Mm-hmm. We're able to see Nigeria in a different light, and we're pushed to the edge, so to speak. And now with everything that is going on with the insecurity, with, the, high rise of, food insecurity as well, more people out of schools. We're seeing more people losing their jobs. We're seeing the economy declining at such a fast rate. So we are here now, and we have literally over 43 days to go. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But
I think what you understand is that people are finally making the connection between their lives and politics.
Yes.
For a very long time, people used to think, oh, I'm not political. I don't want to be part of this. But they've suddenly realized that actually politics determines virtually every aspect of your life.
Yes.
And therefore it is important to, be part of that process and in sort of take charge of who, takes charge of the country by voting. Now, the thing is, we've seen voters go out and collect voter cards before, but they haven't necessarily come out to vote. Lagos, for example, in 2019, just over 1 million people chose who should become the president of Nigeria. This is a state that has over 7 million registered voters, right? At the time of the 2019 elections, I think they were a little bit under 5 million registered voters, but over 1 million, just 1.1 million went out to vote. The difference between the person who won and the person who lost was 130-something thousand votes. So there's everything to play for, right? In terms of if you are able to get out the people that support you to actually who've registered to come out and vote. And
that is very ladled when you think about it. It points back to the insecurity, because I, just in my own day-to-day correspondence with friends and family and, co-workers, trying to understand, okay, fine, if you've gotten through that hurdle of getting your PVC, which I might add was a very strenuous process. About 3 days ago, I went with a couple of my friends, and even to pick up your PVC was so hard because you had to go through lists and lists and lists to find your name, which were not even in alphabetical order.
But you see, part of the problem as well is that we tend to do things at the last minute.
Yes.
We've had sort of 4 years between the last election and this elections for people to sort of get serious, pick up their PVCs. But in the usual Nigerian style, we like doing things last minute. So the numbers means that you are going to have those sort of delays.
Yeah.
But apart from sort of the voter turnout, which I think will be very influential, there's sadly other less, good things that are going to influence the outcome of this.
Like insecurity.
Well, yes, insecurity, but because we have an expert here today,
yes.
I thought we'd discuss that last, but there's this ethnicity, unfortunately.
Yes.
There's religion, because we're seeing these become factors in the way people, are coming out to vote. And I think the candidate that will do well will be the candidate that manages to persuade Nigerians outside their region, to actually vote for them, because we're seeing people sort of voting patterns that look as if they may. So we're seeing people sort of sure of winning within their own locality. Now, if they're able to then translate that into winning from other localities, you will see a difference. And I think over the next few weeks, you and I would sort of take a little more granular look at some of these issues.
This is the first time. I mean, we definitely do have other candidates, but it seems like this is the first time that we are, three top contenders are representing the three ethnic, divisions when it comes to like Nigeria. We're looking at, of course, Peter Obi with the Igbos, and we're looking at Atiku, who's representing Hausa and Fulanis, and then of course Bola Ahmed Tinubu with the Yorubas. So I do urge Nigerians to go out to vote, not because of tribe or religion, but vote the best man.
And this is really going to be the test of it, to see, which candidate is able to transcend their local areas. But in addition to that, there's another factor. So these elections are elections that I think you're going to see people increasingly are going to vote not necessarily for one party all through. There seems to be some evidence that people will vote for one candidate of a party in the presidential elections, but may not necessarily vote for that same party at the sort of other elections. So if you look at, for example, the Southeast, which most analysts believe will be carried by the Labour Party, analysts don't also believe that just because the Southeast votes for Peter Obi, that they will then vote Labour for all the governors, right?
Yes.
So there are factors that are going to determine which which party is able to do well within a region where maybe one candidate at the presidential level has swept the elections.
Definitely.
What are those factors? Over the next few weeks, we will be discussing some of that. If you look at somewhere like the Katsina State, which is the president's hometown, where you would think, there would be a walkover for the APC, that has not necessarily panned out, because there's also a traditional rivalry between the people of Katsina town and Daura, where the president comes from. Some of it is playing into the politics. So we see the PDP doing much better than we thought they would do in a place like Katsina. So these are also sort of some of the issues, that will determine the outcome of the elections, both at the presidential but also at the local level. And then, of course, insecurity.
Definitely. I mean, you have broken it down, Kadare, but I think it's time for us to look at the week that was. We'll take a look at the top stories that made the headlines around the globe this week. Now, starting with Edo State. Edo State government denied an earlier report that 32 persons were kidnapped at the train station in the Igweben in the state. Now, the government clarified that only 20 persons were kidnapped and have been rescued. The state's commissioner for communication and orientation, Chris Nehikare, told journalists in Benin City that the latest figure of victims was based on intelligence reports from security operatives from the area. Edo State Police Command announced that an unspecified number of travelers waiting to board a train were kidnapped at about 4 p.m. last Saturday. Now, according to the statement, the suspects, who were armed with AK-47 rifles, invaded the train station and shot sporadically into the air before marching off with an unspecified number of intending travelers into the nearby bush. Now, this is not the first time that we're hearing about such abductions, and I'm hoping definitely the last. But first off, what is it with this difference in numbers? Why are we getting one number from the minister, and then we're getting a different number from the eyewitnesses?
I think you find that generally people in positions of authority, governments, they sort of tend to downplay this sort of incidents. Partly is because they're trying to manage, fear, and because things like this, do inspire terror. And they don't see that sometimes in doing that, they are sort of undermining confidence in themselves, So if you sort of lie to your public about numbers, what then happens is that they don't believe you about anything else you say you're doing. But they would tell you they're trying to manage public fear. They're trying not to, allow the terrorists to sort of succeed. But it is also possible that there was a breakdown in their own communication, that genuinely they are going with information that was given to them by the security services. But also don't forget, local people are not necessarily trained to count, and fear can be a factor. So when people are attacking you, there's a tendency for you to sort of exaggerate
those numbers
because you're operating from a place of fear. So there are multiple reasons why these numbers could be different.
But then, if we're looking at the space of course, insecurity, which we're going to delve into, we're seeing a repeated attacks, especially when it comes to railway transportation. Obviously, because of the isolation of such areas, like I said, this is not the first time, and hopefully want it to be the last. But
And this is worrying because, this is not exactly a country that is well connected.
Yes.
So the few, stations that we have, the few places that are connected by, they are sort of a lifeline for people needing to move around because the roads are bad, planes are unaffordable. And so trains, to a certain extent, when they started running, were sort of providing that affordable alternative for people to move. And so if now we saw the Kaduna incident, which was really, very harrowing for the people who went through it. And so now you have Edo. Outside the fact that, it means that you are forcing people to stay in with the implications it has for business, for social life, for family life. There's also the fact that you're looking at insecurity now increasingly moving south.
Yes.
Right? Which was why when things started in the north, and there was a general attitude in some quarters about, it's the northerners, let them kill themselves. Those who were sensible understood that this is the same country, and that if you don't nip what is going on in the north, sooner or later, it's going to spread and it's going to travel. And we're seeing that now. So again, it has implications because we're also, again, going into elections. So it's affecting social life, it's affecting the economy, and now it may actually affect our ability to go out and vote, the people that should be in charge.
All right, then. Let's move on to our next story.
President Muhammadu Buhari is reiterating his call to foreign governments and their representatives not to meddle in the country's internal affairs. The president spoke during the week when he received letters of credence from ambassadors of Switzerland, Sweden, Republic of Ireland, the Kingdom of Thailand, and Republic of Senegal and South Sudan at the State House in Abuja. Buhari urged ambassadors to be guided by diplomatic practice and to go about their duties professionally. Now, what do you make of that call?
My thing is, why does the president, why is he, there's nothing wrong with, these are people that have systems that work. And when an outsider is looking in, I think he's very quickly able to pinpoint, certain issues and problems. So my question is, why is the outgoing president so bothered about international meddling? If our hands are clean.
I don't even know what that means, to be honest. When he says meddling, what does he mean? They shouldn't make any comments on the elections? Is he saying they should not make observations about, it's not likely that they're going to take money and give to one candidate and not the other. Now, that would be meddling. You know what I mean? It's not likely that they're going to say, vote for this person, but don't vote for that person. But if what they're doing is what normally happens within sort of international circles, where they're sort of observers, where they're sort of, saying, we've noticed these systems need to be improved. I think, that is part of, even in your personal life, that's what your friends are supposed to do, right? They're supposed to be there to advise you, to help you, make sure that you don't make mistakes. If they see you derailing, to bring you back. And so I don't really understand what the president... it wasn't detailed, so we don't know what he has in mind.
According to the statement that was issued in part by the media advisor, he did say at some point, I urge you to be guided by diplomatic practice to ensure that your activities remain within the limits of your profession as you monitor the build-up to the elections and conduct of the general election itself.
But also, let's be honest, he's also the president, so he might have information that we don't have. The fact that he's gone out of his way to sort of be quite specific in, issuing this warning, maybe he's been told something that we don't know. But in the sort of general scheme of things, I think you find that generally what they do is they advise, they caution, and, in some cases, they help civil society with funds, to either monitor or to do certain things like training that helps, manage the vote and things like that. I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Definitely. Well, let's move on now to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission that's saying it will remove the name of former Director General of the Labour Party Presidential Campaign Council, Doyin Okupe, from its watch list following his arrest in Lagos. Now, Okupe was arrested and then released by the Department of State Service, DSS, at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport. He has reportedly been on the EFCC's watch list for 6 years. The DSS cited its cooperation with the EFCC as the reason for Okupe's arrest. In December, he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for breaching the Money Laundering Act with an option of paying 13 million naira in fines. He escaped going to jail after paying the conviction fine. That's a very interesting way of putting it. He escaped going to jail by putting the fine. There are a lot of people that are not necessarily happy with the outcome of this, but then going a step further to say, you know what, we acknowledge that this person who was an authoritative figure has gone outside of, his obligations to that particular office when he committed such crimes. Do you think that was the right, that's the right way to go, or should there be more stiffer fines for him?
There are two parts of this story. The first is the admission that they've removed his name from the list. So that tells you our processes are sometimes failing. Yeah. Because once he'd been convicted, if the process is that if you were on a sort of watch list and after certain things happen, you should be removed from that watch list, why did it take an arrest at the airport for that to happen? So there's some sort of failure of communication between the airport authorities and the EFCC. So that's one part. On the part of sort of corrupt people who've been convicted and the sort of sentences and fines they get, I'm not too sure this government is signaling a so-called seriousness in the fight against corruption. We saw them pardon governors, 3 of them, that had been convicted of theft, essentially. And now, we're seeing sentences and deals that are going on. I'm not quite sure that we are making it clear that corruption is bad. Because so look, the Accountant General, for example, right? The allegation is that the money in question was over 100 billion. He's returned 30 billion, we are told, according to the news. And this is just based on the reports that are out there. That means there is still over, 70 billion
which is
in somebody's hand.
Yes.
I would take that risk. You know what I mean? I would take that risk.
It's just like paying the tax on money that's been stolen.
So if you sort of do that, the numbers and do the calculation, 3 years in jail, 100 billion, okay, it works, right? And so what I'm saying is that we are not necessarily doing things that would deter people. The punishment, in my view, is not punitive enough. Right? And I'm not speaking about a specific case. I'm just giving various examples. I think we're not taking enough punitive measures. We're not punishing hard enough for this crime to become unattractive.
Definitely.
Yes.
I agree with you, and I definitely agree with you on that.
Now, Russia's defense ministry says its forces have now captured the eastern Ukrainian town of Soledar. The strategic town has been the site of fierce battles in recent days between Ukrainian troops and mercenaries from Russia's Wagner group. Soledar is just 12 kilometers from the regional capital of Bakhmut that Moscow has been trying to take now for several months. Earlier, Ukraine said more than 500 civilians are trapped in the salt mining town, and the battles in this area has been some of the bloodiest in the war. For the Kremlin, the capture of Soledar will be hailed as a victory after months of what is reported as failures and setbacks in its 10-month war. What do you make of this crisis in Europe?
I mean, Russia, Ukraine, you start to think about it, like, when would this, and I remember when this war even just broke out to begin with. I was reading a story yesterday about, a Russian soldier that was jailed for even refusing to join the Ukraine war, and his stance on this was, it seems that who is suffering the most are those that are on ground who don't even understand.
As is always the case with war.
Who don't even understand the policies or even why they are doing what they are doing. And when you look at, a city like Soledar that Russia says it's captured, you start to now look at the effects that has on the people who occupy this particular city. But
I mean, war is never pretty, which is why sort of people do their best to avoid it. It's often fought for interests. Often the people that bear the brunt of it, their interest is not part of those interests that people are fighting over. But for us in Africa, for example, the Ukrainian war has been significant in terms of just, pushing up energy prices. A place like Nigeria that should be making a lot of money from selling gas, for example, because we are a gas country, isn't doing that because of some of our internal problems. And for me, it just sort of points, what the Ukrainian war has done is point to sort of our wasted opportunities as a country, where we don't sort of build the resilience and the processes that mean if things go wrong, even if they don't affect us directly, we somehow end up bearing the brunt because we haven't done the work that is required to sort of isolate ourselves from global issues.
Yeah.
In fact, there are countries that are benefiting in Africa from this Ukrainian war, apart from Nigeria,
Definitely.
which has gas.
Well, that's a wrap on the week that was.